Okay, wonderful. It is 3 o'clock, well, 3:01. So calling the Finance Committee meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. I will do the roll call. And by the way, for those of you online, you're missing an Arctic event here in the historic schoolhouse. It's warmer outside. So if some of us are wearing gloves, and it's not a fashion statement. So let's see, who's here? I am here, Stephen Casani. All right, Kenneth Levine. Lucy Neely.
Present.
Jason Pressman. Here. Michelle Takai. Here. And William Urban.
Here.
Okay. Everyone is here, which is very, very good. At this time, I'll move to item 2, oral communications for items not on the agenda. Yes, Betsy. I'm not sure. For those online, Betsy Morgan Taylor is going to say a few words, but we're trying to figure out how to connect her to all of you.
All right. Is it working? I can't tell, but if you say it's working, I believe you. It is on? Okay, I'll just try to get close. Thank you, Chair George and members of the Finance Committee. The resident survey that we conducted earlier this year during the town manager's search revealed that the Portola Valley townspeople ranked finance as their highest concern. The town council's priorities, moreover, this year ranked finance as number 1 as well. In other words, the 5 council members and you 7 are working with considerable consensus, which is a good thing at this moment in this town. We all have consensus. We're focused on the right things. When you ask the question, as many times, this is the financial questions, as many times as the question needs to be asked to get an answer, you're doing a great job. I really want to thank you for pursuing what we need to know as residents to feel reassured. I don't, for one, know why any member of the Finance Committee would not have regular access to financials such as they exist today, without which none of our leaders in whom we place our trust has the means to exercise their responsibilities. And I mean particularly the town council included in that. Towards the goal of identifying what are acceptable and appropriate oversight measures, I'd like to propose a joint meeting of the Finance Committee and the Town Council collectively, a sooner rather than later meeting that could be held on some off Wednesday evening and would allow for an engaging and fulsome, as Judith likes to say, discussion of the town's financial oversight and accountability. In theory, you're a team that works collaboratively together on the residents' behalf. But until June of this year, I found myself in the dark about your oversight processes. And there are hopeful signs out there to be sure. Our new town manager and recently the subcommittee for the Finance Committee has been doing an excellent job of asking those questions and representing us. But making your role and your expectations more clear would provide the impetus to change those things that require changing and accept those things that are structural and abiding. So thank you for being there with us as we're trying to discern the difference of what can be changed and cannot, and live with one another in a town that has good financial processes, accountability, and controls. Thanks so much for being here, Town Manager and Cindy.
Thank you very much, Betsy. I will discuss that with Judith, who is going to be a bit late to this meeting, but she will be coming, representing Town Council for us. I see Rita has her hand up online. Rita.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my comment. There were some really great suggestions that are in the minutes from the last meeting. And, you know, as there have been suggestions in past minutes from this particular meeting, but how can some of those items that, you know, people spent time on move forward, and how will the residents know that those items are being moved forward? It's nice. I'm not sure who did these last minutes, but you know, they were a lot more inclusive than past minutes. So thank you, whoever did that. But please, let's get some momentum on these minutes and move these issues forward. And thank you for all that you've done. And I really appreciate the report that happened at the town council meeting. But like Betsy said, we all need to be working together, moving forward and discussing these things so that we can get some traction instead of just conversations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rita. And with respect to ideas in minutes, we do look at them and we talk about them. Not all suggestions get acted on in real time, of course, but that's a good point to continue to look back, and we will do that. I see Caroline, you have your hand up. Why don't you go ahead?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Like my fellow residents, I want to thank you for all the dedication and all the time that you spent representing us. And I really appreciate all the reports by the subcommittee. It's really helpful. I was a little concerned when I found out at the last town council meeting that we're still using consulting SACO for the town. And I'm wondering, I would like to hear from you guys how you feel about that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment on use of consultants. I think I'd like to defer that into our agenda item where we'll be hearing from our town manager in a few minutes of audit status and also the update on the financial status of the town. So we'll do that. Anyone else? I don't see anyone else online. So we will close out oral communications. I don't believe we have any announcements or presentations. We'll move to item 4 on the minutes. I assume we've all reviewed the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve? Second. In favor? Aye. Okay, minutes are adopted. And for the earlier comment, the secretary at the last meeting was Ken Levine, so he did an excellent job. So thank you, Ken. With that, we'll move on to new business. And I have as item A always the audit status, which is until we're caught up, will be a perennial, hardy perennial in my use here. But I'd like to, without objection, roll that into item B, because I think discussing the audit status in isolation does less good for us than the comprehensive look at the overall financial condition of the town, what town staff led by our town manager are doing about it. And I think this is the time to hand over to Sharif and ask him to give us an update on a lot of activity that's occurred since our last meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, George. Good afternoon, committee. Thank you for having me again. Thank you for having Cindy and I. We've made a lot of progress, I think, and there's been a lot of movement in finance. As you all know, my main priority, one of the biggest priorities I had beginning as town manager, was getting our house in order. And one of those biggest pieces was getting our finances in order. And what I did very quickly was I wanted to be proactive, get ahead of the issues, if you will, and I enlisted the help of Christian Company to help us identify our issues and really put them down in writing, what those issues are, what those priorities are. And Many of you tuned in and also supported the last council meeting where I presented my state of the town, if you will, and went over the Chris report. And so I won't go over the Chris report here, but wanted to thank you all for your support, whether on or off, behind the scenes or in the public meeting. But it was very clear that the issues written by Christian Company are serious and they're important. And we have some significant work ahead of us that needs to get done. One of the pieces that we established right away, as you all know, is we do have 2 dedicated senior accountants on board that are Town of Portola Valley staff. We also have a full-time finance technician that's helping us with all of the technician work that shouldn't be Cindy's work or senior accountant's work to get that done. So as of right now, we do have 4 full-time staff working in finance, which wasn't the case before. So you're not looking at a 1-person show or a 2-person show to get this work done, if you will. What I wanted to do is make sure that we're proactive. I wanted to make sure that got out to the public. I actually issued a press release and sent it to the newspaper, so they were aware of the Christian Company report. So we're ahead of this problem. We're being proactive. We understand what we need to get done, as opposed to being reactive in all the things that we need to get moving forward. Some of those sub priorities, if you will, one of them are our investments and our investment accounts, making sure we're maximizing our funds within our investments. We'll continue to do that. We'll continue to make transfers moving forward to make sure we have the best bang for our buck, if you will. If it's a simple money market transfer or something else, we'll continue to do that. The other priority is our audits and making sure that we're caught up with our audit. So enlisting the help of Christian Company 23 hours a week, along with our 2 senior accountants. The number 1 goal is to get caught up on our fiscal year 2020-21 audit first. And as you all know, saying to get to that fiscal year 2021 audit, that entails getting all the payroll entries, all the journal entries, all of our adjusting journal entries at the end of the year, making sure our cash balance and our beginning balance and balances, all those things are caught up and up to snuff. So to get caught up with our fiscal year 2021 audit entails all those things behind the scenes to get that done. And we have basically a senior accountant that's dedicated to the catch up, if you will, where the other senior accountants more focused on the fiscal year that we're currently in work. Along those lines with the Christian Company report, with the focus on our investments, our audit, and getting caught up with the different pieces, we did enlist the help of a Christian Company, those 23 hours a week. That's basically just their availability. It happens to work out to 23, not 22, not 20. But basically for the next 6 months, really tackling project by project, whether it's the 457 plan reconciliation, which is one of their first priorities, my first priority, and then also getting caught up with the audit, scheduling the audit, and then moving on to the 21-22 fiscal year and moving forward. And so as we get caught up, we also revamping and refreshing our policies. So our investment policy, our purchasing policy, all these other policies will then bring to Finance Committee to get feedback and support of those policies and things as we move forward. Another change that I made, and I'm sure that you're aware of, is Cindy has graciously agreed to move into and transition into an admin services manager position. And what that does is it ensures that we have Cindy here, we keep her expertise and her knowledge, but also allows me the opportunity to hire an interim director of finance. And the thinking behind asking for an interim director as opposed to a permanent director is I really do think we need to get the house in order first, clean up what we need to do, get caught up, and then we can hand that new palette, if you will, to a director of finance. So the goal is to get someone interim, short term, that's a seasoned director of finance or a retiree or someone that would come in, help us along with Christian Company, along with this new staffing measure, and get us up to snuff in finance. And so literally recruiting probably this week for interim director of finance, getting someone hopefully on board in December, or January, depending on availability, and the holidays might be a little difficult in January. But the goal is to have an interim director of finance, our admin services manager, and our full complement of finance staff, along with Christian Company. So really this push forward to get us moving forward. One of the things that you heard and saw in my report is that this is not something that's going to happen overnight. It does take time, obviously, to get caught up on 2.5 years worth of fiscal reporting and entries and things. And also due to the timing and scheduling of audits and auditors, as you all may be aware, auditors schedule out their year well in advance. For, let's say they have a contract with 5, 6, 7 different cities, they're going to schedule out their year well in advance. So that year is already booked. And so we don't have the luxury, and every audit takes about 3 weeks of preview, and 3 weeks of review. So it's about 6 weeks when you're doing your pre-audit and then your post-audit review. So you can imagine we can't ask an auditor to come in for 18 weeks and get us caught up on 3 years worth of financial review. So what we'll do is, in short order, hopefully get us scheduled for the 2021, then the 21-22, then we can schedule out our 22-23. And so my caveat to council and the community is that this is probably about a 1.5 year endeavor, 1.5 years, 2 years, till we're completely, fully on board, fully up to date on where we need to be. I do believe, though, that within these next 6 months, you're going to see significant progress because you have all hands on deck. You have Christian Company and other folks on board to get us caught up. And so I'm looking forward to the next couple months, really seeing some significant progress. And what my commitment was to council was to make sure that I go back to council and to finance committee and come up with dates to say, now that Christian Company has been here for a couple of months, we're established, we're getting movement and what we need to get caught up on. By this date, we would like to accomplish X, and by this date, we're going to accomplish Y in the state. So really come up with a timeline. I would think probably around February or so to be able to hold us accountable and say that we're going to have these dates and these are our milestones moving forward to make sure that we're really making progress towards what we need to occur. And so, as I mentioned, the focus is really getting us caught up, and we cannot make financial decisions as a group, finance committee, myself as town manager, and the council. We cannot make decisions as a town without having solid financial information and finances with integrity. And so, moving forward, some of these decisions might need to be done on the back of a napkin, a quick Excel spreadsheet, but then at the end of the day, having true budget to actual information and reports. So my number one goal is that by the time we get into budget season, which technically starts now, but when we get to March, April, and May, we really need to have some solid financial numbers because we have to make decisions on our sheriff's contract, housing element. We have our Stanford project. We have all these other pieces coming through. And I'm really wanted to talk today about enlisting the help of finance committee and where I need your help and your support to be able to not only get us used to the conversation, but also the community and council, is that when we talk about we have a set amount of reserves, we have $5 or $6 million in reserves. We then have another 12 million on top of that, which are dedicated reserves. So you have our restricted reserves, you have our unrestricted reserves. I really want to get us into some sophisticated conversations so that finance committee can have these conversations, make recommendations to council and with the community to really understand where we're going moving forward. And so my request to the finance committee is to really enlist your support and expertise to talk about reorganization of our reserves. Are our reserves in the right spot? Are they named the right way? Is it the correct amounts? What can be changed? What is clear for us moving forward? Are there certain reserves that we've used that we are not utilizing, that maybe some of that money needs to be moved over? Really getting us into that conversation, because as you know, there's restricted by fund, by donor, and there's also restricted by council. And so you could have a CIP fund that council restricted and put $2 million in, but that's up to council's discretion. They can then take $5,000 out and put it into any other fund. And so really want to get us sophisticated enough to understand that, because if we only have $5-6 million and we're drawing $1 million a year plus right now on our model, we need to talk about the model. Our model right now is insufficient, right? And so I would love the help of finance committee to have those discussions amongst ourselves, then with the community and with council to talk about our financial model moving forward, because we cannot keep drawing $1 million from our reserve. And so that talks about what's our viability as a town, how are we going to do moving forward? And I'd really love the help of the finance committee to come up with a 3 to 5 year projection and to help me present a projection along with the director of finance and Cindy to say, here's our projection moving forward. And what do we need to do to make a change moving forward? What are the dials we need to change? Is it revenue? Is it expenses? Is it a combination of both? Is it a parcel tax? What is it that needs to happen in order to make us viable as a town? Because we don't have 10 years worth of reserves based on our revenue and expenditure model. And so what I'd like to do is be able to, in the next coming year, talk to council and talk about the use of our reserves, how we're moving forward, and then what are we going to do to enhance our revenue and or decrease our expenses and what our priorities are, right? And have some of those difficult discussions and have a menu for the town to be able to look at. You can fix your revenue by having a Walmart on Alpine Road, or you can have 2 hotels, or you can have 10 restaurants, or you can have a parcel tax, and we choose from that, right? There's no right or wrong answer, and we know what the town, what we want, and what we don't want. But maybe option one, okay, we're not going to get a Walmart. What's the next option? We're going to get something else, or we need to increase our property tax or come up with some different measure. And so I want to be able to present that to council and the community as a, choose your own adventure for the town on where we're going moving forward. But we have reserves in different spots. Some we've utilized, some we haven't. I think there's opportunity there to reorganize those and then have a discussion with council and the community of where those reserves need to be best utilized, if you will. And so part of my request is how can we look at a 3 to 5 year projection as a finance committee? How can we look at our reserves as a finance committee? We're already obviously in discussion regarding our investments. One of the recommendations, as you saw from Krish and also myself, is taking the time to come up with an RFP for an investment service firm to help us as a municipal finance organization get the best bang for our buck, help us with our GASB reporting, our California code compliance, and then also our quarterly investment reports and get that back on track. And that's something that an investment firm can do for us. So really looking forward to partnering with the finance committee. I'm sure many of these goals are your goals. You've stated many of these things, and I'm just kind of restating what my thoughts are as town manager, where I really would like to utilize your expertise. So it's not just, the world according to Sharif or, just me coming into a room by myself with my recommendation. I really would like your expertise and support to get us moving. But it's really, I think, elevating not only our discussions, but elevating the town's discussions about our finances. So it's not only getting our finances in order, but really having the sophisticated discussions of what's our plan moving forward, what's our model, is the model working, and how do we change that? What are our projections moving forward to be able to change that and get that dial so that we can be not only break even as a budget, but obviously have some reserves year over year to keep us as a sustainable town, right? Because we want to make sure that our model is sustainable and can function moving forward. So those are kind of my thoughts, Chair, on the finance update and where we're at. Basically taking the elements of the Krish report, which many of the things we already knew, but it's in writing and it's for the community to take into account, but really appreciate the committee's support and also council support, obviously moving forward, that we've all mentioned that this is a very high priority for us, along with some of the other priorities we have as a town. Getting our finances in order is most priority for all the obvious reasons, if you will. So.
Great. Thank you. Discussion, questions?
I have a question that I'd like to ask. I read the Krish report, which is quite exhaustive, but it indicated that their task was to compare our processes to best practices. And my question is, how did you, in setting this up, or how did they, in operating it, define best practices?
Good question. Part of the best practices is what's outlined. Some of it's in California code, some of it is in comparison with other cities and what other cities look at as far as best practices. One of the biggest things we look at in finance is based on best practices according to CSMFO, which is the California State Municipal Finance Officers Association, which I'm a member of, Cindy's a member of, and basically every municipal city is a member of the CSMFO, and they have an annual conference, they have quarterly reviews, and they put out publications and different pieces based on what is considered best practice for a town. And so a town for a city or municipal government. So there's a lot of publications and things that are laid out there. There's also best practices according to GFOA, which is the national organization that you're very familiar with, government finance officers, which we're also part of. So there are many printed and published best practices in there. And then the third piece is obviously what we're required to do, which is still best practice. And those are the GASB guidelines. And so there's over 100 now. But basically GASB says, this is your best practice as a municipal city. We're going to hold you to this in your audit and basically check off, make sure what we're doing according to those GASB guidelines, that is best practice for municipal government. So there's several different lenses. And then obviously we like to be in line with what the majority of cities are doing when it comes to an investment policy or purchasing policy. But a lot of those are outlined in either CSMFO or GFOA guidelines.
So my concern is that best practices for San Francisco, even Redwood City, would be different than those for Portola Valley or Woodstock. So what effort was made to only use those best practices for towns of our equivalent size?
Yeah, great question. And part of it is we're taking the easier of the two approaches. Is right now we want to get to the basic standard to get compliant, right? So get up to speed, get current, and then be compliant with the GASBs and make sure that we're, recording our fixed assets properly, recording our payroll journals accurately, making sure that our accruals are based on GASB guidelines. So we're starting with the basics, if you will. And then with that, we can then take a look at, okay, what are the best practices and how does it apply to Portola Valley? Because I can guarantee you, we're not going to do what LA is doing or San Francisco or other pieces. And so basically right now, starting with getting us caught up, it is compliant, and then looking at best standards with other towns. And so we certainly do take a look at, and we discuss with the city management of Los Altos Hills, Woodside, Atherton, right? Compare us to those different lenses to see what they're doing as far as best practices go, and say, oh, is our reserve policy in line with their reserves? Is our investment policy in line with what they're doing? And really take that lens. So there are certain things that you do take from Redwood City or Palo Alto, and there's other things you don't, based on our size and our priorities, basically, as a town.
But Christian Company, when they look at the report, what would they use? Because that's a long list of items in the red
Yeah.
light system. If it didn't take into account the fact that we're of different size,
Yeah,
then
their main lens was CSMFO and the GFOA GASBs, basically the adherence to policy and those practices. So it wasn't necessarily looking at other cities per se or comparing us to the larger cities. That's where we come in, right? Is to be able to put it through our lens of Portola Valley, make it so that it works for us. Thank you.
If I may, I have a couple questions about how the work will be conducted. Is it going to be one person from Christian Company, or will there be multiple people over the coming months that'll be spending time here? 23 hours per week you're talking about?
Yeah, great question. I would say 80% of the work is from one person, who's at a director of finance level, but Christian Company has different levels of employees, consultants, if you will. So there's a director level, manager level, and like senior accountant level, and they have different rates that we pay for that contract. The majority of the work will be at the director of finance level to be able to get us caught up on some of the larger items. But already, as we've done, and we've had them work on several projects and like the GAN limit and things like that, they've had management level and accountant level work that'll be in there. So there's a team of about 5 or 6 people that'll be working with us. The majority, the main contact for us will be that one person that's working those 23 hours, if you will.
Will they physically be spending time, a large number of those hours, or some of those hours here in Portola Valley, or from their corporate
It's actually almost all remote. Yeah, it'll be mostly remote Zoom meetings, team meetings, those kind of things.
Okay, they're
So-
headquartered in Pleasanton, or Pleasant Hill, is that correct?
It's Pleasant Hill, yeah.
Or they may be at home or something. right?
Correct, yeah, maybe at
Post-COVID.
home, wherever they're working, but basically they have online access. We've given them VPN access, and also they have access to our folders. They can we're working on the same documents, if you will, as a group. We're not going back and forth by email. We're working
Yeah.
together on the same templates.
So one of the things I was wondering about is the work they're going to be doing have an important component of learning, whereby they're not going to be working right next to someone from the town, but perhaps they are online, so that whatever they are doing and learning and putting together, there's some transference of knowledge. And I always worry about going down the line where we get a consultant who does good work, and part of the recommendation is hire additional consultants to then implement things they have figured out, and you've never really developed your own staff capabilities. Is this part of what we can expect on this initial phase, some, transference
Yeah,
of knowledge?
absolutely.
And so
Yeah,
forth?
great question, because that's exactly why we hired Krish. It wasn't just, we're going to hand you a project, they send it back to us and it's done. It really is having those discussions and those meetings, ongoing meetings with Cindy, with myself. And as they do things, say, oh, here's a reconciliation that we did. And by the way, here's the policy to go with it. Or here's the procedure, or we're documenting how we got here, right? And so we make sure that we can then do it on our own, and we're not relying on consultants moving forward. And that's the value of having Christian Company with their municipal finance background, is to be able to teach us to fish as we're fishing, right? As opposed to just handing us the end product. And so that was really important to me and to Cindy to make sure that we got that.
How did you
That's huge.
select Christian Company? Did you know them from earlier work?
Yeah, Christian Company, we've known them for many years. They're very well known in the CSMFO community and the finance committee. And the actual CEO of Christian Company, she was a partner and an auditor for over 20 years with Mason Associates. So she's very well known with the community. And so that's how we chose Christian Company moving forward to help us with this set piece. So
Thanks.
What's the timing on identifying and hiring an interim finance director? I know you want to start immediately.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So as soon as possible, basically, it all depends on the person that we find. We're looking for a set skill set, obviously. Finding a director of finance in general is difficult. Finding a director of finance in Portola Valley is difficult because of our geography and where we're at. And so what I wanted to try to do is get someone who was either a retired annuitant, someone who's retired and looking for some part-time work, or someone who's in between positions from a different spot to be able to come in and help us. And so also wanted to create it so that it's flexible, so that person could be remote, half-time, different pieces, but at the same time be physical, because I would like that director of finance to be present at committee meetings and or council meetings and be present to meet with staff, as opposed to just Christian Company, which is not going to oversee staff, but help staff. So the goal is as soon as possible. And really what it comes down to is networking and talking and, getting my contact list out and getting folks contacted. And every conference I go to, passing out cards and getting folks to talk and really going to a conference and just spreading the word and getting the word out. And so we actually have a couple of people that have expressed interest just based on the Christian Company report and my council report. They saw it and reached out and said, hey, I might be interested. Let's talk about it. But it's probably going to be word of mouth more than anything to be able to get someone to.
Are you
come
open
in.
to, if you find the right person, identifying and hiring somebody that might be full?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Beyond interim?
Yeah, absolutely. If they're open and willing to be a permanent director, I think it would work out great. Actually, best case scenario is if they were temporary and became permanent. My biggest concern about hiring and recruiting for a permanent finance director now was the time, number one, that it would take to get that person, and then also the just the real issue of burnout. To be able to say, hey, here's this juggernaut of a task that we want you to do, and by the way, keep the train running on a daily basis for everything else that we're doing current. I was hoping to keep those separate, and so that there's one's a deliverable. Let's say you're here for an interim period of time. This is your task. This is how we move forward, and then we can have that clean palette moving forward. But if it's the same person, then absolutely, why not?
So I know in the past, it's been really, really difficult to hire a director of finance. Has the market changed? Or, I know you probably have more contacts.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we could. You can correct me. A few years ago, we tried and couldn't.
Yeah, and it hasn't changed much,
So
unfortunately.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
The
hate
Bay
to
Area is
say-
only getting more expensive,
Right.
right? Rent
So I
is
hate
only
to
getting
say
more
it.
expensive. Yeah.
What's this?
And that's why with this route of having an interim, I think it's a lot easier, right? And so when you have someone that's interim, not only is it short term, you're able to hire them quicker because it's a limited term. You don't have to go through the whole hiring process and the procedures and opening the position for a month, those different pieces. So if someone presents themselves and they meet the requirements, we can certainly hire them much quicker. That's number one. The flexibility of being able to work from home, you can come in, twice a week, making it up, right? There's a lot more flexibility than just the permanent. The issue with hiring in general, any director position, especially in director of finance, is that you have to make sure that we're not only competitive with pay, which what we're looking at, competitive with our benefits, but then it's difficult in San Mateo County because of the cost of living to get folks here. Portola Valley is especially difficult. We're off the freeway. We're not close to a train. You can't just get dropped off. And so there's lots of different nuances, and so we're definitely looking at ways to be flexible and creative to get the best talent here. But yeah, it's not easy to recruit for any director position. So we're going to run into that same problem when we hire for our director of building and planning. With John Biggs, who's a retired annuitant, for example, has a limited term. He can only be here for 6 months or less, right? 960 hours. And so at some point when John sunsets in January or February, we're going to have that same set of hurdles to really get someone in here to recruit. And this is an issue that's ongoing for all of the Bay Area cities. They're really having a hard time recruiting. And so we really want to make it as inviting of a place as possible to make sure that folks can come here. And part of that is getting some of these finances cleaned up before someone comes, instead of saying, oh, come work for us, and here's the Chris report, right? We don't want to overwhelm them. So I think if it's two different folks, we can certainly do that. But yeah, that's definitely a challenge, and whatever we can do to help to get folks in here is our number one priority. So, but we have a lot to offer. We have a lot to the flexibility, I think, is huge. The town itself, I myself was drawn to the grounds in the town, and it is a wonderful community, and I think we can definitely move that and support that to get folks in here. The timing is not perfect, right? December is not easy, and so.
I have a question, which is on the audit scheduling, does doing the current year audit, is that booked, or does that depend in serial form on us cleaning up the early audits before we can do the current one for this year when it ends?
Yeah, it's kind of both. It's really difficult to do the audit that we should be doing now because we have to get caught up on the other 2 years. And right now, for example, like we're getting pretty caught up, we're almost like into February or March, but we're not at year end yet, right? And June is the toughest month to get reconciled on. So that's going to take some time. So it's kind of hard because it's a parallel process as opposed to you could in theory say, let's devote all our resources to getting this year done, but then it doesn't allow you to get the other 2 years done. And what if there's a carryover or an adjusting journal entry or that snowball effect, right? If you had something in 2020 that you need to carry over in 21. So it's a little tricky. So I think the cleanest and best way is to do 2021 first, 21, 22, and then do 23, 24.
But we do have our reserve slots with Mays and Associates that we'll be able to deploy on those earlier years. When you were talking about the timing issue.
Oh, the timing issue. Yeah, there are certain blocks that they did set aside. We can definitely try to still make those time slots, if you will. And so the number one piece is getting through our PBC list, the auditor list, with the help of Krish, the 2 senior accountants kind of knocking it out, and to be able to call them up and then say, okay, we're ready now for 2021 review, and then hopefully have some time to get that done. The other really big piece is making sure that we can have some real budget numbers come March or so to be able to make some educated decisions about next fiscal year, because we can't operate in the dark. We have to be able to have some real numbers with integrity. And part of it is if the system's not going to cooperate, or we don't have time to have the system cooperate, we're just going to do it ourselves and do it by hand if we have to, right? There's good old Excel to get us a budget. If we have to hand enter it, we'll hand enter it while we get stuff into OpenGov and get that moving forward. So kind of removing the barriers, removing the excuses to get us what we need to get caught up. And so I'm starting today with the back of the napkin, right? The $5 million reserves. Oh, 5 years, it's 5 years. We start with the back of the napkin first, get a little more sophisticated. And then finally, the ultimate goal, obviously in very short order, is have all our information in OpenGov, actuals to budget, able to pull up a report on a monthly basis that has integrity, basically.
Yeah. So to the comment at the beginning of the meeting from a member of the public, having the finances available in real time effectively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the whole premise of OpenGov, right? Is being open, and that you can actually log in, pull up your numbers and your financials, and be able to pull the information that you need. So.
Okay, that's really good. A couple of comments on some of the other things you said. I really look forward to the audit schedule in around February, whenever that happens, and also very much support this idea of looking holistically at our use of reserves and what is the appropriate categorization of them for the town to serve the town going forward. Obviously, the primary purpose of the town isn't to hold assets, but we do need a rainy day fund. But at the same time, of course, you can't use your rainy day fund just to fund standard operations because life has become more expensive for whatever reason. So this idea of looking at the reserves at the same time we look at our business model as a town and what activities are we going to pursue, how much does that cost? So what's the expense side and then what's the revenue side is something we really need to grapple with, because you're right, we can't keep dipping into reserves every year. And we also should look at them to see if the categorization is appropriate for where we are right now.
Thank you.
You mentioned a while ago about accrual. My understanding is that we only accrued at the audit, the end of the year, basically. Is that still the case?
Not necessarily. So we do what's called modified accrual, right? And as a government entity, we do some heavy accruals at the end of the year. The majority of them do, but on a monthly basis, we still have accruals that we make and on a quarterly basis. So it just depends on what the expenditure or the contract or what it is. But there are many things that we do at year end that we accrue for the following year. I think because we were behind, those accruals weren't necessarily happening. And so we didn't make sure that we're on a cadence to make sure those accruals happen on a regular basis, whether you're accruing a contract or a payroll entry or a revenue that's coming in on a different cycle. So we just need to make sure that we're on time with our accruals throughout the year, but they do not just occur on year end.
So, Cindy, I recall a discussion about a year ago when we attempted to do quarterly reports. That one of the big reasons we really can't do quarterly reports easily is that it would require a lot of accruals, which we did not make. Now making more than we made then, or is that still the issue?
No, it's an it is an ongoing. So these are just regular accruals that we would do. There's some revenues that we receive on a quarterly basis. So when we have quarterly reports, sometimes those numbers are not available at that time. So when we receive, for example, revenue for first quarter, July through September, we don't actually receive that until October. So if we have a quarterly update in October, we can't reflect back on those, on that actual revenue until it's actually posted and accrued back for that period.
So I think we may be not mixing two things, but you bring up a very good point about the quarterly reports in that we do want to have quarterly reports as a town here. In government, almost always the first quarter report is so light, it really doesn't have any much bearing. There's really not much discussion. I personally, as a finance director, never even brought the first quarter report to council of the community because there wasn't anything there in September. Where your real discussion happens is at mid-year. That mid-year happens to be end of January or February, based on, your first 6 months, you have to close out January to get your mid-year report. But the real discussion really happens at mid-year, which is your first and second quarter report, and then your third quarter. Those are your two heavy pieces. And those are the most important, I believe, as a town. I personally believe that your mid-year report is actually most important than anything, even in the year end. And so what I've done and what many finance directors do is we actually have a very meaty discussion at mid-year, which usually ends in February, to talk about where you are in the first 6 months, all the revenue that you received, your property tax especially, and then you also talk about your closeout for the fiscal year that you closed out the year before, your year-end close. So you can talk about your reserves to say, did we end up over or under? What's our fund balance? And ask council and finance committee to make recommendations on where to put that fund balance, right? And so the mid-year becomes really very important, that those 2 quarters, to be able to say, what did we close out for the last fiscal year? Where did we end up? Where are we going to allocate those reserves? And then also, are we on track, or do we need a course correct for the following 6 months, if you will? And then that third quarter is really to say, we're almost done with the year. Is there anything that we need to do? Is there anything that we need to take a look at? Or are we going to dip into our reserves? Where does it look like we're going as we're down to the last 3 months? And so your quarterly reports are very important. To me, they happen to be second and third quarter are the most important. First quarter, there's basically nothing there. You can make a projection, but there's not much to it. But that's back to your question of, accrual versus quarterly reports. But the quarterly reports are something we definitely want to integrate and bring back in. You have to be caught up. You have to be current to get that. But the mid-year report is something I really want this community and council and finance committee to really look forward to, talk about, discuss, and really have some meaty discussions on what we're doing, where we're going. It's really the perfect time. This is a sweet spot to say, where have we been and where are we going? At that major discussion, what happens to be in February. So hopefully that answers your question.
So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but because I've asked this question before, but I'm going to ask it again. When the last audit that we looked at, I think it was in 1920, and we looked at it very with a cursory review because it really didn't mean anything. We were looking at it 3 years later, and I asked at the time, and never really got a good answer other than that we weren't going to do it. Why don't we combine that into a 2-year audit? 2 of the 3 years that we haven't audited yet, so we can move through this problem faster. And it was always said, we're not going to do it, but no one ever said exactly why we aren't.
Why you don't do 2-year audit reviews at a time?
Review rather than 12 months.
We're required to do a 1-year audit. That's number one. But you can't bring the two together because of the timing. And mainly it's the timing of when you close out your year and then the audit schedule, the auditor's schedule. Right? Because auditors are not going to review 2 years at a time. They're only going to review 1 at a time. They're going to give you 3 weeks to do the preliminary review and 3 weeks to do the final review. So you're not able to bring 2 years at a time.
When I say 2 years at a time, I'm talking about a 24-month review. Beginning balances and the ending balances are 24. So it's the same amount of work. It's just that.
Yeah, part of it is just the GASB guidelines require us to do 1 year at a time. You have to report it out 1 year at a time and done it 1 year at a time. Doesn't mean you can't do 2-year budgets. I'm a very big fan of 2-year budgets and having that being brought to council and finance committee, but the audits have to be separated out and reviewed separately. That's a GASB rule. Yeah, that's a GFOA GASB rule.
Other discussion from committee members? Hearing none, we'll open it up to the public. Comments from the public, questions? Yes, hi, Betsy, in the room. And online, just put up your hands if you want to say something and I'll get to you once we're done with people in the room.
We cannot hear.
Shall I continue where I was?
Yeah,
And
sure, but
I-
why don't you
the
do that?
three-
Can
the
everyone
three
hear now?
reason- Yes, the 3 reasons why I suggest accelerating the time frame for our cleaning up our fiscal house to 1 year is first, because we want to go to the voters next year and propose a parcel tax. That seems to be the more likely outcome of the options suggested. I think it will be far stronger sell to all to the residents if we are coming at it from a strong position and not a crippled position such as we are in now. Secondly, I think that we would find it a lot easier to recruit high quality employees into a vessel that is hardy. I think it's harder to recruit employees into a vessel that is crippled. And thirdly, it is, to the best of my knowledge, because we are so out of compliance with our audits, we are ineligible for any state or federal grants. Going into an El Nino year, that means that we are shouldering more potential damages without a fallback. And if we were to get this done in a year rather than 18 months, we wouldn't have to do that for 2 winters. So those are all 3 reasons why I think we want to look at how, and that would be a question for management, how we might get this done in a year. Perhaps it's a little more costly, but perhaps the benefits outweigh it. Thank you. And thank
Thanks. Any immediate comment on timing, or is that? Yeah, okay.
I was gonna comment after.
After
If there's any
everyone?
other
Yeah,
comments.
okay, great. We'll take all the comments and then we'll bundle the responses. So Rita, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I was a bit concerned earlier when the town manager referred to the Stanford project as our Stanford project. If things have moved forward since the DEIR was finished from the responses from the community and agencies. I believe it was May 13th, 2022. And although we had promises, we have not had an update. But perhaps the town manager wants to give us an update of some sort, since he referred it to as ours. And so I don't know if it's been approved in some way, but it just gives me some concern. And as far as the finances, we have asked in the past about, we were promised, not by this town manager, but our previous town manager, about all of the extra money that we've been getting from the Alpine Inn. And anytime someone asked, well, how much money are we getting? It was always promised that, that'll be updated on the 20th, or that'll be updated on the 31st. And those numbers were never updated. And under the finance online, it was never updated there to be found. So I know the community really wants to know those numbers, especially in lieu of what's been happening to Ford Field parking. So if those kind of numbers can be shared with the community, we've been promised those numbers for quite some time, sooner rather than just waiting till March to report that to the community. That would also be helpful. And so as you can hear from the comments and the comments from the dais, Mr. Town Manager, we've been waiting for some numbers for a long time. So to hear, in February, we've been given those kind of promises before. So please be a little patient with us when we're not just holding our breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Anyone else online or in the room? Right?
George, if I may just speak to the Stanford comment. I said our project, I guess, because it's in our city. I have no updates. So we know that Stanford project is coming and we'll discuss it. That's what I meant by that sentence. If I may back up to Ken's question, and I just thought of this, which is a huge piece, is we are required to do our ACFR every year, our annual comprehensive financial report. That's a requirement of every town and every city. In that ACFR that we submit to GFOA, we have to have the attached audit to that, and that audit is for 1 year. So part of your question of why do we have to have a yearly one, it's because it has to be part of the ACFR every year that we submit to GFOA, just to clarify. That piece. I don't have anything else to add, Chair, besides that we're working on it. We've literally hired Christian company. They started yesterday, day before, last week. We're getting them all the access that they need. They've started some of their projects. And so it could only get better from here. And I can start bringing numbers and things back to this committee and to council as they come up, and obviously to the community when they ask questions. And the expectation is when we have questions that we can pull up a report and get that number for all of us. So.
A point I want to acknowledge here and just make clear for everyone in the audience listening and for the record is that there are a lot of irregularities that have been discovered by you, and getting the right process in place here financially is going to take some time. We basically, Sharif, you arrived sort of the day before yesterday in financial terms here, and have moved very quickly to get the appropriate resources in place to first identify where we're falling short and then come up with a plan to fix it, and are now executing on said plan right at the beginning of doing that. And so while I know there are a lot of specific questions out there and we're hearing a lot of them and people would love to have the answers right now, what we're dealing with is getting into a process with staff under Sharif's leadership and under town council securing the resources and giving the direction that will lead to this all being, the way it was supposed to be some years ago when we first rolled in the OpenGov system during a pandemic, and, don't want to rehash all the things that sort of went sideways for us as for many others during that period, but we're now digging out. So I think we should take a moment just to feel good about that and the trajectory that we're now on.
And I think my commitment to the community, my commitment to council, my commitment to you as a committee, and to Bill and his concerns regarding our investments and different pieces is, okay, now the talk is over. We have our plan, and now I need to come back with real action, right? So real numbers, real action, real change, and those are coming very soon. So I've identified the issues, I've put them out to the public, we've discussed them as a group. We have a plan in place proactively to address those issues. Now it's a matter of coming back with actionable items. And so part of my commitment, you heard me speak from the very beginning, was I really wanted to get our house in order by January. So here we are in December, because I really need to hit the ground running in January to deal with all of our priorities and things moving forward. So this will be my last talk. It'll be more of, this is what we're doing and this is what we have, whether it's an update on the audit, real numbers, a discussion, real change in our investment policy, real movement in our investment funds to move it from LAIF into Schwab or other pieces. Those things are now coming, as opposed to, here's our plan and here's what we're talking about. Now we're moving into the action phase. So obviously that hinges on, we have Cindy here, we have Christian Company now on board, literally starting with us. And then it also hinges on having an interim director of finance moving forward. So that's my commitment to the committee and to the town.
And an important part to highlight is that it's part of a comprehensive plan. So rather than focusing on one item, like what about cash balances, or what about Stanford project, or what about trying to put this as part of a comprehensive process for the whole, which then makes it straightforward to stay on top of all those things. Okay, and I see another hand online. Christy?
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions. We own land as a town that we rent out, and I'm wondering if we've reviewed those contracts, rewritten those contracts for 2024 to appropriately gain revenue, since that is our goal as well. And that's question number one. And then if you could let us know what the contractor, Jim Seiko, what value can be giving our town and is giving our town. I'm unclear on what he does. And then let's see, have we moved the money to an account that makes interest versus being an account that does not make interest? Can you comment on that? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Christy. I will just deal with that in the sense that, as just said, what we do with our land, what we're doing with our overall consulting expenses and every other expense in town is the subject of the process that Sharif and the town staff are working on now as a whole. So I don't think we're set to respond on that particularly right now. And again, the next topic on the agenda is the cash management, and that's part of the whole thing as well, right? It's an important component, but it's not the only thing that we're dealing with right at the moment. Anyone else? Okay, we will close that and move on to town cash investment policy. And oh no, Rita already spoke. Yeah, thank you. So, and I'll ask Bill to comment on your report.
Thank you. There is a 3-page follow-up report as part of the package. Actually, only 2 pages of it is new, and that was just to report what's happened since our last September 26th meeting regarding enhanced cash management. As I have in the subcommittee report, there was the first transfer of 1.1 million came out of our TechCU account, bank account, with very little interest being earned there. In a physical check on September 21st, it was then deposited into the town's investment account at Charles Schwab on October 4th. And then on October 20th, it was invested in the Target Treasury Money Market Fund with the enhanced yield at the time of over 5% annually. There have not been any further transfers that I am aware of or that I've seen. I do have view-only access on the Schwab account and have for the last 7 or 8 years, starting back in the 2016, 2017, when we first set up the Schwab investment account, so I can see what's coming in and when it's traded. I did have a conversation with Sharif. He initiated a phone call back early in the month, and he said it again today. He does expect to move additional funds. I had one new recommendation, and I'm just going to read it verbatim. That came out of this follow-up report. The subcommittee recommends that the town manager be asked to share his specific concerns and reasons for his deferral of movement of substantial sums to the investment account as soon as possible, and any issues he has identified that he believes need resolution before proceeding. So, and to be more formal about this, I believe the process is or should be if a subcommittee makes a recommendation, that's a recommendation for the entire finance committee to consider and vote up or down on. And if they vote up on it, then that presumably goes to whoever, in this case, Sharif, could answer it. This follow-up report also mentions that there were 7 specific additional recommendations that came out of the first report 2 months ago in September 26. I'm not aware that those have specifically been responded to by anyone from the finance staff. I would also ask for a vote from the finance committee to, if we want to have a discussion about which of those 7 we endorse or don't endorse, we could have that now. But I would like to formally have the finance committee take a position on each of those 7 recommendations as well. I think that's an important part of our process here, to be on the record for what we asked and what we asked for and when we requested it, and then also to be on the record for what the response is. That's an important part of the accountability, I think, that has to go along with this cash management enhancement.
Okay, my first sort of reaction to that would just be with respect to cash management, it's one component, an important component of the overall financial sort of getting up to speed, having resources, figure out exactly what's going on, setting up appropriate processes, signature authorities, and everything else for moving money. And so I'm not certain that it's appropriate to really push that as one item above all others right now, right as we're in day one, literally, of trying to get things connected. But I'm very interested in what everyone else thinks, of course. So let's discuss it.
So I share Bill's concern. To me, George has made it clear that our current financial situation is not sustainable, running a deficit of $1 million every year. And yet, sitting in front of us for 6 months or more has been an opportunity to earn $300,000 a year, or 30% of our deficit. It will be extremely difficult to go to the public and ask them to vote to tax themselves when the town is unable to reap the harvest that's sitting plainly in front of them, and they've been given this opportunity for over 6 months. Therefore, I consider this more important in the long term than some of the other things that you mentioned, George. This particular point of reaping the harvest of what might be $300,000 a year.
Other comments?
Yeah, my only, what I don't understand, and maybe you could clarify why, I personally move money around, and, normally within ACH, it's done the next day and then I invest it. And I don't think it takes that much time. I'm retired, obviously, but it's just a few minutes of my time. So I just don't understand the delay, and is it just a lack of priority? I don't understand why this can't be done like you open your, it's sort of like a daily thing or weekly thing. just to spend a few minutes moving cash around and investing it, or something that the consultant, or certainly the interim director, you would think would have enough time to do, because unless I'm missing something, it doesn't take me personally when I move money around, it doesn't take me that long. I'm missing something, I think.
Yeah, I would just echo those comments. I think any movement of these funds is going to be to very low risk government securities, et cetera, at fairly attractive returns. So I think I know we want to get processes in place and procedures and signatures and all that, which is important. But it seems like if we could get this done fairly soon, given the real returns, the real cash that would be generated, I would move it up in the priority list, given that I think it can be done within.
You asked for feedback on the recommendation was just to ask. With all due respect, you've done a terrific job of coming into a mess, and cleaning it up and getting in front of it. So this is not an indictment of you at all. This is just asking, where does this fall in the priorities, and what, if any, impediments are there? So I think that's eminently reasonable. Frankly, more than eminently reasonable. I think it's a necessity for us to report out to the public, because as we talked about for months, way before you were here, we're literally watching like this. I was asked to join this committee many years ago to bring some more sense of what happens in the corporate world. This is absurd. Like this would have been 6 seconds in a corporate boardroom and done the next day. And so I would truly like to understand if there are some other impediments that we're not aware of, or that we need to take to the council to clear up for you to make it happen. Because it seems like we're just literally leaving money on the table. Again, it's not your fault. You inherited it.
Right.
So this isn't meant to, so you sort of position this as a, hey, let's not come down on Sharif about this. I'm not coming down on you at all. I just want to understand, because we haven't gotten answers out of the previous region.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with all of you. I share the same concerns, the same priorities. It is my priority to move this money, and it's my commitment that we will move this money within the next days, week, as opposed to, this is not something I'm going to come back and discuss moving forward. As you know, we had not only the holidays, we had our PV refresh, where we shut down town council for the bulk of the day for the last 2 weeks, and other priorities. We removed all of the impediments from the actual transfer itself, the bank, us, signing authority, all those restrictions are now gone. And so I don't see any more future impediments moving forward. So I'm looking forward to possibly this week and next week moving a bulk of the money into those money market accounts, so we can get the difference, the delta between the 3%, 3.5% in LAIF, and capitalize on that 5% in the money market accounts. So my intent is that this is the last of the discussions regarding the investment piece on that piece, to make some of these, for lack of a better word, quick and dirty transfers to get us in those larger amounts, then come back and have the more sophisticated discussions of where does this money need to sit, in what fund, in what reserve, in what way, and then also bring in the investment firm that specializes in municipalities. So my next update would be that you will hear, and it would be noted on what days I made transfers and get those moving forward. So I anticipate those being done very shortly. So I share your same concerns. It's absolutely valid. And I don't take this as a criticism on me. Yes, it would have been nice to have done this sooner and faster. It wasn't quite as easy as, making a phone call and getting it done. But I think most of the impediments, if not all, are done, and we can now move those funds moving forward. So my commitment is to get those done as soon as possible. Not saying, oh, next month we'll look at it, or after the holidays. I'm saying now, basically. And I can come back to the group, and even if it's an email to you all during the next couple of weeks, to say, these are the transfers that we made, these are the dollar amounts, so that you can feel comfortable. And I can certainly give an update to council, because that's council's priority to me, is to make sure that we're investing wisely. And also, these are easy wins, right? These are no-brainer wins to get us more bang for the buck. So I'm committed to that. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. More discussion on the report?
Well, I'd just like to come back to, there's a series of 7 recommendations from the first report, some of them that are not specifically about moving cash to higher yielding accounts. It's actually about the structure of how many people are authorized to do various things. These appear to me to be the types of things that a Christian company would probably be looking at, but I think the finance committee ought to take a positive stance on all 7 of these September 26 report recommendations. Say the finance committee recommends that finance implement these recommendations. And at some point, I would imagine Sharif would come back and say, yes, I'm going to implement the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, the 5th and the 6th, we're not going to do, and here are the reasons, and the 8th, we have to study some more. In other words, let's work through a specific process, recommendations that are thoughtfully laid out, should not be left on the table and forgotten in the minutes of a finance committee meeting. We had to state what we believe, what answers we want, what things we need to have happen. Sharif is entitled to know what is on our mind and to give an opportunity to give a specific answer and to close it out. I mean, this is just part of good management. This can be about enhanced cash management or anything else. There has to be a process that we follow. And I think sometimes we're kind of sloppy. We talk about things here, but we don't kind of nail down what's going to happen and when and where do we stand on it. So we can do that now, or we can do it at some future meeting, but we need to do that. Thanks.
Okay, a discussion on that?
I agree. Yeah, I agree that the recommendation should be to the council. To solve it the way they wish to.
Right. Yeah, that's true. We do provide recommendations to town council.
I do want to identify the awkwardness of these recommendations, because when we talk about roles and responsibilities of council, roles and responsibilities of committee, and roles and responsibility of town manager and staff, this is getting into a very gray area if you're getting into operations. And I just want us to acknowledge that. You're more than welcome to recommend whatever you like. I can do with it what I want as town manager. Council can do what they want with it, but it's just, we're getting into a little bit of an awkward territory that I have not experienced in other places. And so I want to make sure that it's clear that I don't need to come back to the committee and say whether or not I agree to these things. Finances are under my purview as town manager. I report to town council. You can make recommendations, but I think this is awkward in that we're getting into a little bit into the weeds. I really want to make sure that the committee focuses on your roles and responsibilities, which is policy and budget and direction. And so this is awkward for me. This is uncharted territory that I'm not used to. It's difficult for me to respond to something as town manager when it's already been printed to the public as a subcommittee of 1. It's awkward. And I don't know how to necessarily address that. And I think we need to talk through that. But I find it difficult for a committee to say, we want town manager or employees to do X, Y, and Z, take it to council to approve or not approve, and then I have to respond to it. I don't think that's the right way to approach this. I think there's a different way to do this, because I may or may not agree to many of these things, but I'm not going to say that in public. I don't think it's the right forum for me to say whether or not I agree that you should have view access or not view access, or read only, or have a supplemental human resource knowledgeable and investment come talk to me. This is awkward territory for me as town manager. So I just want to address my thoughts, and you're more than welcome to continue to your committee, your group, but this is different than what.
We had been suggesting, recommending that for months before you were here, and it hadn't been, and we were hitting blanks there. Finance, and they requested that we help. And we appointed the subcommittee. Well, the subcommittee of 1 just because that was to make recommendations. So it was actually at the request of the former review. That's where it originated from. But perhaps different approach right now would be, since you've committed that this is going to happen, that maybe we don't need this specificity to access that the money has been moved, and the risk report on what other money that's left can be moved. Maybe as part of that, we could ask for an update on whatever the processes are to make sure it moves quickly. We're making that recommendation because we've been suggesting, we're not allowed to ask, that this money be moved to get revenue for the town for many, many months. Again, you're inheriting this, but we were trying to get it done. We were trying to help get it done. That's what led to the offer.
Yeah, let me add on to that. where this list came from is in, taking the policy thing of how do we enhance our yield on our money, given what we know about the market. I became aware of a lot of issues within how things were structured. I didn't go looking for those issues. I found that they were blocking what we were trying to do, and I cataloged what those issues were and spoke with staff and Cindy and Sarla when she was here about what problems they were encountering in implementing what appeared to me to be a fairly simple move cash from one account to another one. These are the types of things that maybe a Christian company, if they were digging into it, would come up with as well. They might suggest the same things. So there was a vacuum there where things weren't getting done. It was important. We thought it was important. And there were other things that were hindering the objective. And I simply listed out what those hindrances were and possible solutions. So you can think of it as townspeople that have some knowledge and long history working here, having observations that might be helpful to you. The report does not say you must do these. It says, tell us if you agree with some of them, you don't agree with them, or I don't know yet, and I'll get back to you. That's all it does. I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable, because it's going to be hard for the committee to work in an environment where we can't give you our opinions on things about issues that we have, in-depth knowledge of.
Absolutely. And I welcome the feedback. I welcome these suggestions and recommendations. I think it's a matter of just the semantics. I honestly think maybe you just recommend it. You all agree that this is something that you agree to. And for the lack of a better word, leave it at that. And then I can take that as your town manager, move forward, and I can come back and say, here's what we've done, right? As opposed to, I want to take the awkwardness out of me having to address each comment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But if this is your recommendation as a group, I love that feedback. I want that feedback. You're also representing the frustration and the work that you've been doing for the past couple of years without me here. I can see it in some of these pieces. And so I'd love to take this piece of paper, run with it, right? Without formalizing it to the point where it's either going to council or to me, or I'm having to rebut it or go on a different route. But I'd like to just say, oh, these are the things that Finance Committee recommended. I welcome that, and I'm going to take it as your town manager, right? And so I don't know if I'm expressing that the right way. I just don't want to, I think formalizing it gets into the awkward piece, because I don't want you to feel like you can't recommend, and I don't want to feel like you can tell me what to do,
Right.
right? Because that's for council to do or for someone other entity. But I want you to get what you're asking for, right? And I want for you to know that I'm hearing your recommendations and I value and respect your expertise, right? And so what's that middle ground? Maybe it is a matter of you accept the recommendations and I take that and run with it, if you will. So just a suggestion.
I note that Judith, our town council liaison, has her hand up. Judith?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think this is an important conversation, and I do want to acknowledge that Sharif's, been faced with a lot joining us relatively recently, and I personally am heartened by a lot of positive efforts and identifications of areas to focus on. So it's not easy to move into the situation that he has, and he's not going to be able to satisfy everybody immediately. However, I also want to recognize Bill's and the entire committee's valuable time taking efforts to understand what's going on here and identifying some areas where, at a minimum, people should take a look. But my suggestion, because I think it's premature unless you really want to do something today, I think it's a little premature to give specific direction right now, particularly recognizing what Sharif has said. And I think it's in everyone's interest to let him tell us how he's going to be able to be productive here. But my suggestion, because as a town council member, if you are, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, if you are going to want to make a recommendation to town council, my suggestion is that, we add to the subcommittee and work through what is the recommendation from a broader number of people on the committee, so that the next meeting where you have, I would suggest a more fulsome or focused discussion of where things are, where you are on whatever recommendation you want to make, that it comes forward with additional perspectives already baked in. So please consider that. It's your choice. I'm only saying, as a town council member, I'd kind of like to see a couple different perspectives reflected in any document that goes forward. And my request is to let maybe Sharif meets with people or provides perspectives offline rather than in real time on such specific matters. And then you can make your recommendations, which I think would be very welcome given the amount of expertise and experience on this. George, let me know if that makes sense from your perspective. I'm open. I'm just hearing this as something that strikes me as a little premature to nail down today.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments and I agree. I think we're getting the money moved, which is the key thing, as Jason was saying before, that has been weighing on all of us for a very long time. We're just at the outset of this process of figuring out exactly what's going on. And then when it comes to specific recommendations that get more operational, perhaps more input from more committee members would be useful. With that in mind, I'd like to just open it up. Would others like to join the cash management committee? When it was originally proposed, I considered it, but I was on like 85% travel at that time. I now could join, for example, and if others would, that would be good too.
I actually don't think it's a good candidly recommendation. Look at processes. Let Sharif move the money or put it back if there are any items that we help with. Taking exactly what you said, which is this list of recommendations that was done with thought here, and if you move the money's moved.
Okay.
Our recommendation to the council is very clear: move the money to higher yield. That's been the recommendation. It's been unanimous from the finance committee. We're literally not making money for our town because we haven't moved money. Sharif has said he totally agrees. We're going to move the money.
Okay, and then we can just let him assess the recommendations without a formal vote on the specific. Okay.
And I have a little alternative in that. This kind of reminds me of the Frisch report. This should really be shared with Frisch. Are these things they missed, or are they included in some of their recommendations? That's the help. That would be a helpful way of using it.
Sure, and I bet we can count on Sharif to comment on these things and discuss it as he's working on things through the details. Other comments on all this from committee members? How about, I notice David Cardinal has his hand up. We can go to the public.
Oh, thanks. First of all, I think we can do a bit of a reset, I hope, on this, where everybody's contributions have been in good faith. But it's gotten kind of a little out of hand, I think. If there are tactical issues that Sharif needs to address, I think a one-on-one with him is probably a good idea versus publishing it in an agenda to the entire world, blow by blow. So if there's a way to have that happen, and if people don't think he's doing a good job, then that's a different issue. But I don't think it should be a trial by fire here. Obviously, we want to move the money. I've been involved in managing public companies, and at least for the last decade, nothing happens in 6 seconds. I mean, there's tons of rules, and towns are worse. So I don't know if it could happen more quickly. Probably it could, but I don't envy Sharif, because you make one misstep, it's a problem. So I'd love to see us reset. I'd love to see the money get moved. And I'd love to see the chain of command work where, you know, the subcommittee works up through the committee, works up through the town council. Because Sharif can only have so many different management teams that he reports to, which I do know from 40 years of managing people. But I appreciate, I mean, everybody's spirit's in the right place and we need more money and this is a great step. So hats off to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. In the room, there were some hands. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Allison Illick, and I just stopped by because I had been following the cash management reports from Bill, who I've never met. In fact, sorry, I don't know most of your names, but I was fascinated by your first report, which was written, I think, some months ago. And so it's just something that sort of stuck in my mind, and I had the same questions that you all did. And I feel really reassured today that you're all on it. So thank you for that. I came to thank you for documenting that, for making it so understandable and so clear. And yeah, let's move the money. Let's do it. Great. I also wanted to thank Cindy because you were put in a very difficult position and have been in a very difficult position for a long time. And we all know that, and we're all appreciative. And thank you for being flexible and staying on and continuing to do all the great stuff you're doing. So there's that. And the third thing is just listening to this conversation and going to that awkward place, Sharif. And I get that. I really do. I'd be nervous too. I grew up here, so I know that it's been tradition. I don't know. It's been our culture that citizens have come on all hands on deck to take on any role required to run this town. It just was run a really different way. I don't want to be one of those old people that says, you know, back in the day it was done like this. I know it's different, but I think what I'm hearing is that you have a problem, we have a problem with hiring people to do a lot of these jobs. I mean, there just are not enough hands on deck right now. You've got 18 months or whatever the timeline is to get things under control. And we are all behind you. I mean, I think you're doing great. But there's also these seasoned people that have this expertise. And if there is any way to involve any of us that have some expertise or time to push the send button to make the money move, or to, you know, read what's going on at Schwab, to, you know, come up with a short analysis that someone else can use to implement, we'll do the busy work. I just see that as kind of a natural fit, that maybe in the short term, it's just food for thought. And I'm saying this too with Judith listening, for the council as well, that it may be a way to use resources that are already in town to help up this situation. Thank you.
And Betsy. Thank you, Allison.
Don't you just love listening to her? I want to thank you all as well. We could not possibly afford your bills if we had to pay them. So thank you all for being here. One point that I wanted to make of clarification, because we've been talking about the money and transferring the money, and there are gray areas and there's vagueness. And I just thought it, for sitting through, I think, the richest conversation that I've been treated to, either at town council level or here, about finances, it gives me reassurance that we're wading into these areas where there's awkwardness and where we're trying to suss out what's my role, what's your role. And we step sometimes in each other's territories. We back off. We try to make way for one another so we can work together. The gray areas, the vagueness, though, I think I'd like not to have to come back here in 2 months and have to resurface the stuff that we don't need to resurface. And so it would be nice to identify what the money actually means. If not here right now, then perhaps in some emails so that there's collective agreement about how much we're transferring, because thus far it hasn't been. I'm standing here as a member of the Open Space Committee, and we have $8 million that is not earning interest. So it comes at a cost. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. And I guess just one point to make clear is we are earning interest. We're just not earning all the interest we could. And so, and we're going to fix that in the very near future, as we just heard from Sharif, which is great. What I'm taking from this, and I just want to throw it out for the committee to discuss as a zeitgeist, if you will, is we don't necessarily need to change the subcommittee because it's achieving its aims. We're about to have the money move. Sharif will read what we've recommended, what the output, the suggestions, if you will, and he'll figure out how to run his shop and be reporting back to us on processes and outputs and timelines and all the rest, and we'll get to reflect on that. So I'm not seeing the need for any formal votes from this point, but I want to toss that out. If someone disagrees, let me know. Okay, and any other comments? I think that's the agenda for today.
The one thing that I do need, Chair, from the Finance Committee is the format of the subcommittee report needs to change. Needs to be factual, succinct, as opposed to the format that it's been the last couple months has been awkward as staff. And so that I must insist needs to change moving forward.
Okay, and I could certainly work on that. How do you feel about that? Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, Sharif, I couldn't hear clearly what you said.
What I do need as town manager from the Finance Committee is the subcommittee report. The format of the subcommittee report really needs to change. It needs to be, I think, much more succinct and written in a different way so that it's not specific to one staff member, not specific to one piece. The way that it's written makes it difficult for us, the staff, to respond when it's in writing in this way. That's what I take issue with. The last report, the last 7-page report were addressed to
Are you
Cindy.
talking about the September 25th report?
I'm talking about both reports. We can talk about this offline, I think, but the format of the subcommittee report really needs to change on what we're putting out, what we put in the packet, similar to what Dave Cardinal mentioned. The report can be, you can still have the same message, just written in a different way, I think.
Sure.
So that's all I ask moving forward, but
Yeah, we can take it offline.
I'm happy to meet with you anytime. You know that I made that offer 2.5 months ago. I know you're busy, so I didn't.
you and I did meet, Bill, and unfortunately the report is different though, our meetings. That's why I want to make sure there's no ambiguity moving forward. So we take out that awkwardness as we move
Well, I
forward.
don't
And we
think
can
the
certainly
subcommittee
address
is
that.
going to be writing any more reports. The point's been made, right?
Yeah, I was sort of thinking
Even easier.
your job is done once the money transfers, right? More or less.
Well, don't say that because it hasn't moved yet.
Yeah, I get it, but that was my thinking as well, which is once the money goes and we're in this process of improving things, we're done with the subcommittee.
Yeah. I do want to say, Chair and committee, thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for allowing me to speak. This is who I am. This is my nature. When I have a concern, I'll say it. If I don't, I won't. So you'll always know where I am and where I speak. And sometimes I might put my foot in my mouth, but you'll always know where I stand. And I hope that you'll keep allowing this safe space, if we will, even though it's recorded in public. But I do feel safe coming here. I do feel safe speaking my mind and saying, what's important to me as town manager, what's important to us. I really respect the work that you're doing. I need you. I want you here, and I need your help to move these things forward because we can't do it ourselves, and we can't do it as a staff of 5 or 18 moving forward. So I really look forward to asking for your help and expertise in a lot of these endeavors moving forward. But thank you for allowing me to speak and feel safe in my opinions, because I don't feel like I need to filter or temper what I say, because I feel like we have a mutual respect for each other and our expertise. So thank you for
Well,
that.
that's a great sentiment, and it's one I really applaud, and thank you for saying that. I certainly feel the same way. And I've always been in various corporate work I've done, believed in having meetings in the meeting, and where there's concerns, you express them and you're just very open with them. And that way you get through things as opposed to tiptoeing around them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Motion to adjourn.
What, we've been having these meetings every 2 months roughly.
Yep.
I guess I'm a firm believer in having meetings when we need to, not necessarily scheduled. I don't know if there's a.
I was thinking perhaps the the ideal next arena would be in the February timeframe.
I think February would make sense. If we need to move it, we can. What I'm comfortable with and I'm familiar with is that the finance committee really is ad hoc,
Right.
right? And sometimes we might meet 3 months in a row, and other times we might not meet for 4 or 5 months. So I certainly appreciate that. I think maybe putting it on February makes sense. And then we can revisit that. If maybe February needs to turn into March
Like
for
towards the
timing
end of-
issues.
End of February.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
Yeah,
I'd
we-
certainly support that.
Remember, a year ago, I guess, we went to an every other month schedule because we were getting so many ad hoc meetings scheduled at very short notice that it just seemed to have a utility to have something in the calendar. And then we've had all these events happen. So I was planning to get together with Sharif to talk about what the pace should be for next year. I don't think we're in the calendar yet for that.
And my commitment to you is also, there's certainly many things that I can give to you by email, right? If it's an update of the money that's been moved, I can send out an email to the finance committee. And we can also send that to council as well. So it doesn't have to wait until the next meeting per se.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else? I don't want to ask again. Okay, motion to adjourn? Okay. In favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.